For the last 3 years, the federal opposition has been attacking Labor's management of the economy and the budget. There has been a bedazzling range of numbers thrown at voters in the last few days, but if you really want to understand where this election campaign is going, there are just a couple of numbers to look at, the ones in today's Newspoll. The Coalition's primary vote has slumped to a lower level than the 2022 election, and opposition leader Peter Dutton's approval rating now equates to Bill Shorten's in 2019. The Coalition is in deep trouble, according to Newspoll, which is why all attempts to stick to the better economic managers message seem to have now gone out the window. Sugar hits are suddenly fashionable. Free to the restraint of a coalition making responsible policy promises, the government's going for it too. Not all the promises being made by either side of politics is necessarily a huge expense to the budget, but they have been broadly met with horror and even anger by economists and commentators as representing a new low in good policy, particularly the Coalition's proposal to offer tax deductions for interest rate payments to first home buyers.
It is a rival for the obscene WA GST deal as a contender for the worst public policy decision of the last 25 years.
Housing is now the major area of policy competition between the parties. Labor now has a range of policies. The $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund, which will use investment earnings to increase social and affordable housing. The $6.3 billion Help to Buy scheme, a shared equity scheme in which the government provides first home buyers with a financial contribution to their loan. The Build to Rent scheme, which provides tax subsidies to builders who include social housing as part of their developments. And now, a policy which will allow first home buyers to pay a deposit of just 5% on their purchase instead of the normal 20%, with the government picking up the loan insurance cost of the difference. And what we will call the $10 billion Build to Buy scheme, in which the government is pledging to build 100,000 new homes specifically for first home buyers. The scheme, in conjunction with the states, will include $2 billion of grants, with the rest of the federal contribution being in the form of zero-interest loans or equity in developments.
The Labor policy will put upward pressure on house prices, and at least Labor is honest enough to admit that it will. They just argue that the impact won't be substantial. But what Labor's policy will do will be to allow some people to borrow more than they otherwise would, and they will pay more for housing than they otherwise would, which will result in higher housing prices. Now, that effect will probably be less than under the Coalition's policies, and at least Labor is also putting forward a policy that will increase the supply of housing.
The Coalition says it will spend $5 billion to fund infrastructure like water, power and sewerage at housing development sites, which it says will free up to 500,000 homes. Cut migration to free up another 40,000 homes. Allow first home buyers to access up to $50,000 from their super to buy their first home, and now a proposal to let first home buyers deduct interest payments on the first $650,000 of a mortgage against taxable income for 5 years, provided you continue to live in the home. There has been criticism of both sides' policies because, by increasing the borrowing capacity of buyers, they will almost inevitably push prices higher in the market. But it's the Coalition's policies attracting the most ire, both because they pump up demand, but also fail to deal adequately with the bigger problem, supply. The Coalition puts the cost of the tax deduction at $1.25 billion a year, which most analysts feel is much too low. And lots of people will miss out or be worse off as a result of the policy.
Most renters will be disadvantaged by the upward pressure that these policies will put on house prices.
The policy analysts may hate it, but the Coalition promising voters they could be paid up to $55,000 over 5 years will be very attractive on the urban fringes of our major cities. But housing is just one part of the cost of living issue which underlies the election campaign.
A Coalition government will deliver a one-off cost of living tax offset up to $1,200. Around 85% of taxpayers will be eligible for this reduction.
Today I announced that a re-elected Labor government will create a new $1,000 instant tax deduction.
These are not tax reforms. They don't represent any substantial change to the way our tax system works, any more than the government's proposals did.
As for the rest of the future that the leaders of our two political parties were offering voters yesterday, the Prime Minister was reminding them of some of what his government has achieved in the last 3 years and promising more. The government says its big policy announcements to date have all been accounted for in the budget. The Coalition insists it will release its policy costings before polling day. The polls suggest voters have become increasingly cautious about Peter Dutton. And it is issues like the work from home policy and references to Trumpian politics that have been particularly damaging.
I think both parties are treating voters like mugs.